Cade stared at the wreckage in front of him, his breath shallow as the old, battered spaceship loomed like an abandoned skeleton. A gift, they called it, a scrap heap, the galactic powers insisted, meant to remind humans of their place in the cosmos. His fingers curled into a fist, the weight of 1,000 failures pressing against his chest. He was used to being underestimated, but this ship, this could be the start of something different. This is it? Maya's voice sliced through the tense air, full of skepticism. She was his tech expert, sharp, observant, but quick to dismiss anything that didn't fit into her vision of the universe. It looks like a piece of junk. It's got potential, Cade said, trying to keep his voice steady. He had to believe that. He wasn't here to collect junk. He was here to find a way to prove everyone wrong, to show that humanity was more than just a speck in the galaxy. The ship's hull was scratched and burned, scars from battles fought long ago. There were no signs of recent activity, which meant they had the advantage, for now. Jax, the former soldier with a gruff exterior and a hardened past, didn't share Maya's discontent. His eyes flickered over the ship with a mix of curiosity and resolve. "We make it work, Cade," he said, his voice low but sure. "We always do." The team had been together for 3 years, and each of them had their own reasons for staying. Cade had long ago abandoned the notion that they were just a group of survivors. They were something more, something dangerous. "Let's get to work," Cade muttered. He could already see the potential in this forgotten vessel, even if it wasn't immediately obvious. The ship had been left to rust by the galactic empires that had thought humans insignificant. It wasn't just a ship. It was a message, one that Cade had received loud and clear. "Underestimate us. See what happens." They set to work immediately. Maya clambered up the hull, her fingers tracing the broken panels as if deciphering an ancient language. Her brow furrowed in concentration, but she didn't speak. Cade didn't need to ask her what she thought. He could tell by the set of her shoulders, there was something here. It was just a matter of unlocking it. "You sure this thing can be fixed?" Maya asked finally, breaking the silence. "If it wasn't," Cade replied, "I wouldn't be wasting my time here." Jax moved toward the interior, flicking switches and pulling levers. The lights flickered on, dim at first, but steady. He grunted in satisfaction. "I'll take a look inside. But we're going to need more than just repairs to get this thing off the ground." "We'll get there," Cade said. "One step at a time." But there was more to the ship than just broken wiring and rusted hull. Cade felt it, a presence hiding beneath the ship's surface, a hidden history that the galaxy had deliberately buried. He didn't know how, but he was sure of it. And that knowledge burned in his gut like a fire he couldn't extinguish. Just as he turned to check on Jax, the comms buzzed to life. A sharp, mechanical voice crackled through the static. "Unidentified vessel. You are trespassing in restricted space. Prepare to be boarded." Cade's heart skipped a beat. He didn't need to look at his crew to know they were all thinking the same thing. The ship was supposed to be unimportant, a forgotten relic. But someone, or something, had noticed them. "That wasn't part of the plan," Maya said, voice tight with uncertainty. "We've been found," Jax said flatly. "And I don't think it's just a friendly checkup." Cade's pulse quickened, his military instincts kicking in. Whoever these people were, they didn't just stumble upon them. They were hunting something, and that something had to be the ship. He turned to Maya. "Can you get us out of here?" She nodded, already working her way back to the cockpit. "Give me a minute." Jax was already checking his weapons, his face set in a grim expression. "I don't like this, Cade. But if they're coming for us, we need to be ready." Cade watched his crew with a sense of grim determination. The ship wasn't just a relic. It was a symbol of something long lost, and something humanity was about to reclaim. The stars outside seemed to swirl, shifting into the impossible. The galaxy, vast and indifferent, had underestimated them. But no more. "We're not running," Cade said quietly, to himself as much as to his team. "This time, we fight." The tension in the air was palpable, thick as smoke, as the team braced for the battle ahead. The ship, though broken and abandoned, was no longer just a piece of scrap. It was their weapon, a weapon that, for the first time, could turn the tables in their favor. And they weren't going down without a fight. The cockpit hummed to life, the faint whirring of old circuits betraying the ship's age. Maya's fingers danced over the control panels, her face lit by the soft glow of flickering screens. A distant part of Cade's mind wondered how long the ship had been abandoned, drifting through space, unnoticed by the galaxy at large. Now, someone had found them. And they were coming fast. "You're sure about this?" Jax's voice was gruff, his hand resting lightly on the blaster at his side. He stood by the door, ever the sentinel, always on alert. "You think this rust bucket can outrun them?" Maya didn't glance up. "We don't have much choice, do we?" Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. She had a sharp mind and a sharper tongue, especially when the pressure was on. The hum of the ship grew louder as the engines sputtered into life. Cade stood behind her, watching the screens. The sensors were erratic, nothing like the sleek starships of the galactic empires. This ship was nothing but a series of patched-up systems, but if they could manage to harness the right combination, it might just be their ticket out of here. "Hold on," Maya said, pushing a final button that sent a surge through the console. Cade's grip tightened on the back of the seat, bracing himself as the ship lurched forward. The engines roared, though not in the polished, efficient way of a military vessel. No, this was the sound of a forgotten machine trying to awaken after centuries of neglect. "I've got them on visual," Jax reported, his voice low and steady. He'd always been good at focusing on the task at hand. "Two ships, both heavily armed. They're coming in fast. We won't outrun them for long." Cade's pulse quickened. The ship wasn't just a derelict. There was something about it, something in its design, that didn't sit right with him. It wasn't just an ordinary battle cruiser from the old wars. The materials, the energy signatures, it didn't match anything they had seen before. "Is there any chance they'll let us go if we comply?" Maya asked, her eyes flicking to Cade for a split second. She already knew the answer, but sometimes it helped to ask. "No chance," Cade replied, his voice firm. The implications of their find were becoming clearer by the second. "If they wanted peace, they wouldn't have targeted us. We've stumbled onto something they don't want us to have." Jax's eyes narrowed as he stared out the small window. The enemy ships were drawing nearer, their dark silhouettes growing larger by the second. He didn't need to be told twice. He moved toward the weapons locker, retrieving a blaster and a combat knife with practiced ease. "We fight, then," he said. It wasn't a question, but a statement of resolve. The fear in his eyes was buried beneath layers of experience and duty. The ship lurched again, its hull groaning under the strain as Maya pushed the engines to their limit. They were flying blind, relying on instinct and outdated technology. But Cade wasn't worried. "Not yet. We need to get to the lower decks," Cade said, his voice low but commanding. "There's something here. Something hidden. I don't think they're after the ship alone." Maya glanced at him, brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "There's a system aboard this ship," Cade replied, "a technology, a power source. It's not just a warship. This is more than we thought. We need to find out what it is, before they do." They had barely reached the first turn when the comms flared again, this time with a message that made Cade's blood run cold. "This is the Kalthari fleet," the voice crackled, icy and full of authority. "Surrender the vessel. It's of no use to you. You will not survive this encounter." The transmission ended abruptly, and Cade turned toward the others, his expression hardening. "You heard them," he said. "This isn't just about survival. It's about knowledge. They want what's on the ship, and we can't let them have it." Maya's face grew grim as she processed his words. "You think they're after what's inside the ship? Not just the ship itself?" "Yes," Cade said, voice steady. "They've made a mistake. They've underestimated us. Jax grunted, already moving toward the ladder that would take them deeper into the ship. We'll show them why that's a mistake. Cade's thoughts raced as he followed Jax down into the bowels of the ship. The air grew colder, the passageways tighter. He could feel it now, the presence. The thing hidden inside the ship. Something ancient, far older than anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. And someone who knew what it was willing to kill to keep it hidden. They reached the engine room, where the humming was louder than ever. Cade felt his heart skip a beat as he saw it, the core. Not just a power source, but something far more advanced. This wasn't human technology. And it wasn't something the galaxy had ever known. This is it, he whispered to himself, just as the first blast shook the ship. Hold on, Maya shouted from the control room. We're in for a bumpy ride. But Cade didn't hear her. His mind was consumed with a singular thought: they had just unlocked something that could change everything. And now, they had to fight to keep it. The blast that rocked the ship sent Cade sprawling across the deck. His body slammed into the metal floor, the impact jarring his bones. The lights flickered and dimmed as the emergency alarms blared. His vision swam for a moment, but the urgent sound of Maya's voice cut through the haze. Cade, get up, she shouted, her words sharp with panic. We're not done yet. He forced himself to stand, groaning as his muscles protested. The corridor around him was shaking, the walls groaning under the force of the impact. He could feel the heat of the flames licking at the edges of the ship, the acrid scent of burning metal filling his nostrils. Maya, report. Cade called out, his voice rough but commanding. We've lost engine power, she responded through the comms, her voice tense. But the core is still stable. We're not dead yet, but we're close. Cade cursed under his breath. The Kalthari fleet was relentless, and every blast sent the ship's systems into chaos. But Maya was right. The core was still functioning, and that was their lifeline. The secret inside the ship, the one Cade had been so desperate to protect, was still within their reach. He heard Jax's voice next, calm and focused as always, cutting through the chaos. Enemy ships are coming in fast. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they board. Cade's mind raced. They needed to buy time. They needed a plan. Head to the lower decks, he ordered, pushing through the pain in his side. We have to secure the core. It's the only thing keeping us alive right now. Maya's voice crackled through the comms. You think the core will save us? I'm betting on it, Cade said, his jaw set in determination. Now move. Jax and Maya moved quickly, their steps steady despite the chaos around them. Cade followed, his mind still working through the odds. The Kalthari weren't just after the ship, they were after the core, the power that lay hidden deep within its heart. He didn't know what it could do, only that it was something the galaxy wasn't ready for. And he wasn't about to let them take it. As they descended into the lower decks, the ship shuddered again, another blast reverberating through the hull. The lights flickered out entirely for a moment, leaving them in darkness. Cade's heart pounded in his chest as he strained to hear the sound of footsteps, of their enemies closing in. We don't have much time, Jax said, his voice a steady anchor in the growing storm. What's the plan? We hold them off, Cade replied, his mind locking onto the task ahead. If they get to the core before we do, we're done. We can't let them access it. They reached the core room. The walls were lined with reinforced steel, and the air was heavy with the hum of energy coursing through the ship's veins. Cade felt the pulse of the ship beneath his feet, as if it were alive, responding to their presence. Maya moved toward the control panel, fingers flying over the keys as she attempted to seal the room. We're not going to hold them off for long, she muttered. I can't reinforce the doors in time. If they get through. We fight, Cade said, cutting her off. We fight until there's nothing left. Jax grinned, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. You're finally making sense. But before Cade could respond, the door burst open. 3 Kalthari soldiers stormed into the room, their armor glinting darkly under the dim lights. The room filled with the sharp, acrid scent of their pheromones, an unmistakable warning of danger. Get back! Cade barked, his blaster already in his hand. The Kalthari didn't hesitate. They advanced quickly, their movements fluid, coordinated. One of them raised a weapon aimed straight at Maya, but Jax was faster. He threw himself between them, his combat knife flashing as he deflected the blast. The force of the impact knocked him to the side, but he didn't fall. Instead, he rose, anger burning in his eyes. "Cade, now!" Jax shouted, rolling away to take cover. Cade didn't need to be told twice. He fired, each shot landing with precision, taking down one of the Kalthari soldiers. But they were relentless, more poured through the door, their weapons charging with lethal energy. The room seemed to close in on them, the walls pressing down as Cade's mind raced. They couldn't win a fight like this. Not without more time. Not without. Then it hit him. The core. It wasn't just a power source. It was their weapon. "Maya," he shouted. "We need to use the core. Now." Maya, breathing heavily, nodded. "I'm trying, Cade. But I need." "Do it." Cade roared, his heart pounding in his ears. With a final, desperate press of a button, the core flared to life. A blinding light filled the room, and the air hummed with a power that made the floor beneath their feet tremble. The Kalthari soldiers hesitated, their faces twisted in confusion as the energy from the core surged outward, enveloping them in a crackling field of light. Cade could see it now, the future of humanity, their answer to the galaxy's threats, lying in the palm of their hands. But it wasn't enough to stop them. Not yet. "Hold the line," Cade said, his voice steady, his grip tightening on his blaster. "We're not done yet." And they weren't. Not by a long shot. The blinding light from the core began to subside, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The Kalthari soldiers, disoriented by the surge of energy, staggered back, their weapons still crackling with tension. Cade's heart pounded, each beat reverberating through the steel walls of the ship. His eyes never left the soldiers. They were more than just a threat, they were the harbingers of what humanity had feared for too long. "Is it enough?" Maya's voice, shaky but determined, cut through the stillness. She was at the controls, fingers hovering over the panel, ready to unleash whatever she could. "Can we push them back?" "We'll find out," Cade said, his tone grim but resolute. The core had powered up, but he wasn't convinced it would be enough to stop the Kalthari. There was something else, a wild card. And it was in their hands. "We're outnumbered," Jax growled from his position by the door, where he was crouched, surveying their enemies. "Not a good position to be in." "They're not just after the ship," Cade said, his voice low, eyes scanning the room. "They want what's inside it, the core. And we can't let them have it. It's not just a power source. It's a weapon. We need to use it." Maya hesitated. She knew the implications of unlocking its full potential. The power was immense, but so was the risk. "You want me to unleash the full force of the core?" she asked, uncertainty creeping into her words. "We have no choice," Cade replied, meeting her eyes. "If we don't, they'll take it from us, and everything will change. Humanity will be nothing but a footnote in their history. This is our chance to show them what we're made of." Maya's hand trembled for a moment, then steadied. She turned back to the controls, her fingers moving with precision. She was terrified, but there was no turning back. They had to win this battle, and if that meant tapping into the unknown power of the core, then so be it. Suddenly, the door behind them exploded open, and more Kalthari soldiers poured into the room. The air seemed to thicken with the hum of their weapons charging. The light from the core flickered again, pulsating with a strange energy, almost as if it were aware of the tension in the room. Cade drew his blaster and fired, his shots taking down two of the incoming soldiers with deadly accuracy. But there were too many, and the room was filling with chaos. Jax, ever the soldier, was already in the thick of it, his combat knife flashing in the low light as he fought hand-to-hand with one of the Kalthari. "Maya, now!" Cade yelled, his voice strained with urgency. Maya's fingers flew across the controls, triggering the core's activation sequence. The ship trembled beneath them as the energy from the core began to warp the very air around them. A low hum filled the room, and the walls began to shake. "Kate, I can't," Maya's voice was edged with panic. "Just do it." Kate barked, eyes locked on the advancing soldiers. The lights overhead flickered one last time before going out completely. For a brief, breathless moment, there was nothing but darkness. And then the ship erupted with light. A wave of pure energy radiated from the core, filling the room with a blinding radiance. Kate had no time to shield his eyes. The intensity of the blast sent shockwaves through the entire ship, and the Kalthari soldiers were thrown back by the sheer force of the energy. Kate barely held his ground, his muscles straining as he anchored himself to the floor. The soldiers screamed, their bodies convulsing from the power surging through the room. Kate's ears rang as the light slowly faded, and when his vision cleared, the soldiers were gone. Their armor lay scattered on the floor, the heat of the blast still radiating from the remnants. "Is it over?" Jax's voice was hoarse, his face streaked with sweat and blood from the skirmish. Kate took a cautious step forward. He scanned the room, half expecting another wave of soldiers to storm in. But there was only silence now. He could still feel the hum of the core beneath his feet, a strange energy lingering in the air. "We did it," Maya said, her voice almost in disbelief. But Kate's eyes were on the core. It had been activated, and there was no going back now. The power had shifted. The galaxy had just learned that humanity wasn't to be trifled with. But at what cost? "We've won," Kate said quietly, his voice rough, but there was no joy in his words. The core had given them victory, but the implications of what they had unleashed were far from clear. The galaxy would now know what humanity was capable of. The question was, would they be ready for it? Jax stood by, his eyes scanning the darkened room. "What now?" Kate exhaled slowly, his thoughts heavy. "Now we take control. We don't just survive, we thrive." And for the first time since they had stumbled upon the ship, Kate felt a flicker of hope. The core wasn't just a weapon, it was humanity's future. And they would shape it on their own terms.